Oh, hang on, just doing something. Facebook glitched on me.
Damn Facebook, always getting it wrong.
Well, we're live on Facebook. Just says right now. Anyway, webinar is now streaming live on Facebook. Blaming Facebook, maybe not a good idea. Hey, folks.
It just decreased our search ranks by a million times.
Yes, indeed. Hey, good to see you, Andy.
Good to see you, mate. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, wine and wisdom. Hey, listen, while we sort of get it going here, a few people might be dialing in on a fabulous Friday. We had some technical issues, mostly mine, to get the stream up and running today.
It was even.
But just a quick introduction for those who may be dialing in for the first time, haven't met myself or Andy before. This is our Friday debrief on the week. Andy and myself been working in the real estate and finance and banking worlds for over 20 years. And we met many years ago, 3-4 years ago now, doing some extra self-development and business learning ourselves, and really enjoyed each other's company and conversations. So today, as always, we want to sort of have some wine, see if we can't share some wisdom from our very small points of view and our own little lunch boxes, our own backyards when it comes to property investing. 20 years myself as a property investor, running Positive Real Estate for over 18 years, helping property investors across Australia and New Zealand and all over the world. Actually, we've got some expats. And Andy, you in the banking world, over 20 years, New York, London, Australia, and more, which is super, super cool. So some amazing experience from you, mate. So everyone, welcome along. Good. Hopefully everyone's been able to jump on to the stream. And mate, what's happening this fabulous Friday, mate? How's the week gone for you? It seems to me that a lot of people have gone back to work, gone back to school. Kids are back at school, certainly in my house. And that's bringing the world slowly but surely back into the world of activities. So, mate, why don't you just chuck it out there? We're going to sort of wax a bit of lyrical, gang, on some things today. I've got a few things in the real estate world, but Andy, mate, what's going on in the world of investing, shares, mate, banking, whatever?
Mate, it's really interesting at the moment. So the week has kind of changed momentum, not just in Australia, but internationally. And actually strip that. Action items, every single business owner, every single property investor, it's freaking tax time. We've told you a million times before. Get ready for it. Get geared up. If you want tips, go back, watch the previous wine and wisdom that you'll find in our threads, but just get on top of it. Like, this is the best year you'll ever have, potentially, like depending on your circumstance, of course, but there are so many tips that we've shared. So please go back, watch the last 20, 30 minutes of last week's session if you haven't seen it, but get into tax time. You really need to, 100%.
Mate, and some of the highlights too, mate, I think, probably just jumping in there, and maybe you were going to say it anyway, but, certainly for some of the small business owners watching right now, there are so many business loans out there available from not only at a government level, so national government level, but also state and local level, guys, like, a 10 grand here, 20 grand there, $250,000 business loans there. And for those who are, keen to rebuild their business, or their business, is still in pretty good shape, but you want some extra capital to come out of the blocks running hard, Andy, it's time to get it done, right?
100%. What bad debts, clear them off the tax, stock, have a look at it. All of the loans that are available, government grants as well, get into the business community. If you need to restructure a business, like, in all seriousness, like the stuff that we've covered in the shit that we've covered in the last 3 weeks is gold for business owners. So if you're on it, just go back, look at it, understand whether you're in the place, and then reach out if you need to. Yeah. It's kind of cool. We've got some people now really engaging and reaching out for advice and stuff like that. And we're trying to track the comments as well. So tax time, just plan. Oh, and the biggest one for small to medium businesses is, and as long as it stays like this, and I'm not an accountant, just framing that up. So what my accountant tells me is 150 is where the instant asset write-off is now, but that's going to take a swan dive, and it's not going back to 30,000, which is where it was before, and 25,000, which is where it was the year before. Holy shit! I'm coming in stereo. 150 is where. I don't know what just happened then. I heard myself.
A bit of feedback.
Bit of feedback. But the instant asset write-off is taking a swan dive from 150 to 1,000. Right, so it's back to 1,000 next year. And so if you do need to deploy those resources, if you do have those laptops, those iPhones, those computers, hell, these technology, phones, cameras, video cameras, podcasting stuff, like just start forward planning.
Well,
forward planning for your tax.
One of the ones the other day, Andy, certainly if anyone's learned any lessons from the moment, business owners right now, you want to sort of get more digital in your business world. Obviously buying that digital equipment now makes a lot of sense. You don't have to, you just have to, put a deposit and pay for it or whatever this year, and you get the instant write-off. I did see a few of our compadres in the business world have got some grants for setting up, their business in a far more digital manner. So I know you know a little bit about that. So maybe just talk to a few of the business owners through that stuff. I think this stuff's amazing. Like, as a business owner, why not take the opportunity to stock up on, tools of the trade for the future for you? It makes a lot of sense.
Totally. I love what you did there. You said, why not as well. So that cheers for the pun. So yes, in Victoria, there is, if any of you want to know about it, in Victoria, this is state government. This is a state-based, I'm not sure legislation is the right word, but a state-based initiative rather. They're giving government grants out. If you're a part of JobKeeper, so if you qualified for JobKeeper, that's one of the qualifications to be able to access this grant.
Yep.
And there is also, if you're part of the COVID hit communities, right? So there's two different qualifiers that are in there. It's really plain, simple English. You have to take action. So if you want it, post in this thread, I want it, and we'll make sure that we post the link in there. You've got to do some work, right? We can't give it to you all on the silver platter, but this is literally, and apparently, so this is secondhand knowledge, but literally applied for, and less than a week later, 10 grand, bang, allowing somebody to set up a digital studio to run their business more effectively. And I think
these are grants as well, Andy, not loans, grants from the government.
Grant. Yeah, total money in your pocket.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward the thinking on that, right? Okay, now I need to spend $10,000, or I don't need to, but now I need to spend $10,000. Why don't I go out and spend $10,000, claim the instant asset write-off, and get the government grant? So it's a win-win-win. So like when I say this is an opportunity of a lifetime, like you've just got to dig or ask. And like I'm actually surprised that we don't get more people asking questions on this, in that, because there's the pool of our clients, our community is massive. Everybody from your $2 shop up to your $500 million businesses and above, well above. But we're really focused on the sub $500 million and sub 50 million businesses, and we've got such a broad network. Like, ask the questions, because this stuff's gold. Like, you'll save a fortune, and save tax, get the government grant, and ultimately better the way that we do business.
Yeah.
And that's key, because I said it earlier on in the week, and I think you and I had a bit of a chat about it. There's going to be the people who move forward from this and go, shit, that really shook me up. How do we do things differently in the future, given what, and I'm not going to say blessing, but given the time that we've had to think and pivot and innovate. And there's the other ones who are sitting there going, I just want to get back to work as normal.
Yeah.
And if you're thinking getting back to work as normal, you might have a business for the next 5 or 10 years, but I reckon all of a sudden people who are getting the grants, going digital, doing all of these different things, it might take 2 or 3 years, but they will far surpass you, and you'll be left for dead, and you'll wonder what the hell happened.
Learning some new skills. So let's just quickly maybe unpack that for 30 seconds. I heard you say something about, you're surprised a lot of our network haven't really asked us or even reached out, or you've heard on the grapevine that people taking advantage of this. And, what do you think's going on there? Number one, and then maybe number two, what would you suggest to people listening in how they could sort of really maybe get a handle on this? Because in my world, it's like, maybe the business owners are knackered, and by the end of the weekend, they just want to switch off and not think about it, or this opportunity from a revenue, from a investment point of view is right there. So maybe an hour, maybe two, hunker down on Saturday or Sunday and make a list and put a day aside and hit into it. What would you think?
I kind of think that here's an incredible forum, because literally we don't have to have the answers, but if it just has to be the question, what's available in Queensland, what's available in New South Wales. I know what's going to happen now. We're going to have what's available in each state that's going to come through, but we can kind of put that out in our communities, but also keep an ear out for it as well. But practical things that you could be doing is you could be contacting your local what's it called, Jace? It's the business network. Every state's got them. Chamber of Commerce. Yeah,
Chamber of Commerce. Yep.
Reach out, ask them what grants are available and things like that. It's slowed down so much. You might spend 5-10 minutes on the phone just understanding whether any of them might suit you. They'll send you the links through.
I know Victoria's got a $10,000 grant. Queensland's got a $10,000 grant as well.
And they've got some additional loan facility as well in Queensland.
Yeah, Queensland, the state government will lend you $250, and then the national government's offering $250. You can't get both, but you could qualify for one or the other in those two locations. And myself are positive. We've applied for the Queensland one at this point in time, which is great. So a few of those grants. You got your bell going on, love it. The Victorian government's only given, they said there was only like 39,000 applicants, and they were looking, they were expecting 200,000 plus applicants for the grant. So, they'd given away less than 25% of the expected grants. So, a lot of opportunity, a lot of money there that the government wants to put into distribution to support businesses and to support people. I think that's something that's pretty cool that people could be sinking their teeth into for sure.
And I don't want to be contentious, but you kind of look at it from a political perspective, and God, this is fucking contentious. But that they're talking about repealing the JobKeeper. When you see that you're offering grants to small businesses and they're not being taken up, you're going to look at the data and you're going to go, do we need to keep this, what the government would see as just free money, free cash, when people aren't using, resourceful, well, let's just call it resourceful money to create change? They must, I know the media are now become just a complete bunch of scumbags, I reckon, because now it's all shit again. If you've noticed when you're watching it, it's just all shit. The politicians are shit, the initiatives are shit, everything that's coming out shit, everything is just, it's horse doo-doo, right? And it's not the case. So I think, and the other side of that is, would you spend 10 minutes doing some research for the potential of making 10 grand? And anybody who's ever visited a pokie machine, gone to the casino once, or even had a bet on the GGs at the Melbourne Cup, you've done it before. But the probability of getting the grant, if you're a JobKeeper already and you're in that system, or you're part of the affected area, like the probability is very, very high. Take the money to use it as resource.
I'll give you an example of one of my clients in that sort of space. He's got a business, and I won't sort of name it, multiple locations, and he was in negotiation for another location as well. He had to shut his business down because couldn't have people congregating there. He used the time, so he used the code of conduct with all of his landlords, and because he had zero income, those landlords had to roll with it and give him like a rent holiday, so he hasn't paid any rent. The landlords could then pass that on to the banks, and the banks allowed the landlords not to have any issues as well. So that was good. So it was genuine. He has now used this COVID time to renegotiate a lease he was about to enter into, and it's 50% less. So he's like happy as Larry. He's applied for grants and got a number of grants for his business as well. His whole team have got approved for JobKeeper, and also he's put his own personal lending on pause for 6 months across all of his mortgages. And so we were doing the math the other day, and it was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, say hundreds of thousands of pure cash in his business bank account for him for when he starts up again, to really just go for it. And now he's considering opening another 2 locations and employing another 40 people on the backside of this, which is exactly what the government wanted. They want
100%.
Yeah, 100%. So, that stuff is absolutely brilliant. But, talk about the media circus, Andy, in our world, they love to cause dramas, and, in real estate, they get their little twisty whirly thing going, and carrying on like a bunch of pork chops, over the last I was doing this the other night with all of my clients, talking about I was tracking in the media. It was like, I don't know if anyone's sort of listening in, they've ever seen something about Mary, and there's a hitchhiker, and he talks about 7-minute abs, and he's come up with this great idea, 6-minute abs, right? And it reminds me, and you can see.
Hang on, Jace, what about 2-minute abs?
But it doesn't work like that, like you got to watch it. And maybe it means nothing to anyone listening in, and Andy and I having a private joke here, but, you can see the media sort of march. They were like, oh, property's going to drop 10%. And then someone else went, no, 20%. And then someone else, like 2 weeks later, no, it's 30%. And then someone else, 40%. And then some lunatic from America who's coming out to sell his book going, Australia's going to drop 50%. Like they were just like, it was absolute lunacy, like a circus,
Was that Harry Dent?
It was Harry Dipshit.
It was
Dent,
Harry
yeah.
Dent. Mr. Doomsday.
Oh, mate, all he can do is just bloody, peddle his stupid book about everything going to hell. And then he says, but by the way, if you want to invest, you should put it in my fund, and I'll make sure you do okay. Right.
Yeah. When you're negative every year for 50 years, you're going to be right probably 5 times.
But you know what? They only got to be right once, and then they're legendary, right? Like, it's just like, it's insane. Yeah.
And that's what you've got to be careful of. I'm actually Googling some stuff, because what I can tell you from a markets perspective, what's been really interesting in the US, and I know today was off a little bit, but it was interesting that, so from an American perspective, what has been leading the bounce, and America had a massive bounce. Let me see if I can bring it up. They had a huge bounce, really, for no reason, because largely their index was, or their country is still in a fair bit of challenge, right? So
but isn't Trump saying we're all going back to work and let's get the nation back to work? Like, I mean, sounds like those guys,
Look, I reckon it's probably got, there's a degree of propaganda in it.
Yeah.
Right. And I get it. I still fundamentally believe that Trump is potentially an absolute freaking genius, or he's just gone senile. One of the two, right? Because he can't behave the way that he behaves. It's like, but maybe he's speaking to the lower socio-demographic. It's all fine. It's all, we're good. It's going to disappear. That's the worst Trump accent ever. But
yeah,
it's not what my point was for this anyway. So this is the S&P 500, right?
Yeah.
And if we have a look at it, this is sort of down in and around 19th of March, which was my birthday. Oh, fuck.
Point.
yeah. Happy birthday, Andy. The lowest point in markets in 5 years. Well done. But we got down to 2,400, right? And then it bounced super, super quick. We're now sitting up at 3,000. So to put that into perspective, the top was 3,300. So that is exponential. That's
a crazy recovery. In what time frame? 6 weeks?
Yeah. So 19th of March to now. But really, it did most of that recovery by the 30th of April.
What's that
So,
as a percentage? That's got to be lunacy. That's 50% or something, isn't it? Like
it's 70 or 80%. That's what the market did.
Did you put any money in there, Andy? Why didn't you tell me to invest? I was like,
well, mate, America was the last place I would have invested.
Well,
just by the way, Aperol Spritz is a way of me not getting drunk by the end of these sessions, because they go for a little while, and normally have a bottle of wine there's too much alcohol in there. So I found a way of being able to last the whole night. So yeah, they bounced, and it was based on tech, right? A lot of tech. So it was Disney, it was Alphabet, it was
Zoom,
Netflix.
Zoom was Zoom in there.
Zoom was in there. Zoom was in, and actually Zoom's a really good one, because Zoom's one that I'm going to chat about. Zoom was in there. All of this sort of stay-at-home stuff just jumped. What was it? Peloton, which was an incredible sort of home application in the US, that you could do your spin classes and shit from home, and you felt like you were still part of a big spin group. Really great technology, went like that. So it was led by all of these tech stocks and a lot of the giants as well, Microsoft, all of the cloud-based stuff. So we all rushed into the cloud. But so we knew that those sectors would benefit, but now it's earnings period. And so they're reporting, and then the profits aren't as high as what they potentially could have been, or what we would have believed them to be. But what we've seen in the last week, at least in the US, and I reckon we're going to start to see it in Australia next week, because we mimic America, is we've started to see those big tech stuff. So the stuff that was fad, and it was kind of like, it's sort of reactive buy, right? Not like Ansell, that the market drops and they do hand sanitizer, gloves and condoms, right? Yeah. Which are going to be used prolifically or prophylactically, depending on what you have to say. Now they bounced, and they've got good earnings to support that bounce. But these companies don't necessarily have great earnings to support that bounce. I mean, Netflix became, almost cash flow even, or potentially cash flow even. It's a massive capital intense business. So there was this fight for share. Anyway, my point being, in the last 2 or 3 days, what we've seen is the market still rallied a little bit, but we saw all of these other stocks, bar Tesla, that is just like, forget about it. I don't know what's going on with Tesla. Like Elon Musk, I reckon if there is a Neo in the Matrix and they live here, it's freaking, it is Elon Musk. Like, I watched this interview with the CEO of Mercedes Global, and the guy said, Tesla's market cap is now 86 billion? Shit, I can't actually remember the figures. Let's just call it 86 billion. No, it'd be 860 billion, and you guys 56 billion. It's gone. Does that make you feel bad? And he's gone, well, it's something to aim at. Right? How does Tesla get up there? Anyway, forget about Tesla. Like, the guy is a genius of some sort, and he's got puppeteering strings that I can't figure out about. But so the key thing, sorry, it was a long way of saying this. What we're seeing in the US now is the rise of actual yield play stocks. And we go the growth versus value game, right? But let's not name it. Value is when you buy a stock that is underpriced based on its future cash flow earnings, right? So it's got strong cash flow in the future, and its price is low relative to that earning.
And you're buying it because you get the dividend? Is that what you're like? You're buying it because you want the dividend, yeah?
Well, you're buying it because it's underpriced based on its forward earnings capacity.
Its yield, yeah.
But you buy Facebook because you think it's going to be a tech giant.
It's grow in value,
it'll grow in value.
Yeah.
So sort of like you buy land because you're going to land bank it and you believe it's just going to appreciate based on council approvals.
Yeah.
Or you buy good quality real estate that's going to yield a really high income, which is going to provide that. Same thing is true of the valuation of the shares. And so what we've seen is a little bit of a shift now. And so Zoom took a big dive. Peloton took a dive. A number of these, and when I say dive, I mean it just 2% correction. Everything else has been going up.
Yeah.
But they've started to shift. So the market kept going a little bit in the US, but not via the same drivers, not by the Microsofts, not by the Apples, not by these big things that have been driving, but by other values-based consumer stock. And and airlines and things like that. Now, what that is, that's optimism of future earning, the belief of future earnings of these other types of companies.
Yeah.
So, if my thinking is right, and we're going to follow, like in Australia, we have seen a reasonably. I mean, where did we finish up? The All Ords finished up at 5,872. Right, considerably up, 5,872. And the All Ords have been up. They've trended. They were on a downward slope today. But as we started to ease, what we saw is exuberance for ease. And what I think we're going to start to see now is people starting to look at different divisions of the market going, all right, if we open up now, what is the impact on the revenues of these companies, and what's the forward looking like? People are starting to become more optimistic about what the future looks like. And if they're right, then Australia is still very, very suppressed in comparison to the US. So I think that looking in our backyard is going to be a really, really key thing moving forward.
What do you think about the timing for deployment for purchasing? You were talking about you're dipping your toe in the last sort of 3 or 4 weeks for yourself and your clients. Like are you ready to sort of jump back into that marketplace and sort of deploy cash yet, or you're still hesitant?
No, I think we're deploying us optimistically in certain areas. We love commercial property in certain areas, and certain areas like industrial logistical operations, which is sort of like
really
robotic
strong.
factories.
Yeah. I did a short webinar the other day on logistics and that type of bulky goods stuff, and it's been going very strong. So the world of offices going to struggle, but logistics, real estate, wow, yeah, even better. So it's really interesting, 2 speeds in that space. So yeah, interesting.
Well, even just looking about, we've been ordering tech stuff into our own place, and these courier companies, who they're behind and who's involved with them, and how the logistical operations are working, and the people supporting them. And there's a lot of technology behind that as well, as far as logistical technology, which is really interesting. So there's some big players who are operating in that space. So what I feel like is happening is all of a sudden, because we operate in labels in the world, we operate in labels, but in finance, we operate in labels as well. And it's kind of like, oh no, you can't call yourself a growth stock because you've got great long forward, cash flow. And it's like, oh, for fuck's sake, can we just drop the labels? But what we're seeing is more labels, because what we're seeing is now it's not commercial property, it's commercial industrial, commercial
logistics, commercial, yeah.
Well, commercial logistics has only just come out.
Yeah.
And then we're going to see not just tech, it's going to be tech logistics. It's going to be tech, and we're going to see these changes in and around, but they're really, really important ones to look at, because that is where we're going to see these sort of trendal moves. So when you say, are we getting in? Yeah, we are, but we're also kind of looking at it and going, okay, well, what's the next growth story? Because many of them kicked where there was knowledge, like Ansels, and they kicked and CSLs, and they still continue to be really profitable.
Yeah.
Then we're also looking for, okay, the Qantas to Sydney airports. It's like, what's going on there, right? And as soon as and they're diving at the moment, and I think that actually some of them are actually diving on the back of this shit from the press. Like, yes, fundamentally they're not in operation; they've still got a lot of hardship to go through. But why they're falling when other parts of the market are increasing is really interesting. And I think that the press has a bit to play in this, because they're jumping out. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about, Jace, was I'm not sure if you know, I didn't prep you for it, so not that we prepped this anyway. But the media down here, just last night I heard it. They've gone, the banks are flogging you on the back of the interest holiday, and now are penalising you or something. And I'm not 100% sure that it was true. I think it was just the reality of, well, they're capitalising the interest. I think that was the gist of what they were saying. Have you heard anything around that?
Listen, I haven't heard anything of recent in the last day or two, but I mean, the mortgage holiday was to be capitalised, and then there was some small legislation changes to say that the banks had to add it to the end of the loan and not increase the payments. So, not quite sure what was going on, but the government said, "Hey, listen, you can't make people pay more later when they back at it. You can't make them make more payments. You have to add the 6 months onto the end of the loan." So, not quite sure what that means. Maybe some propeller head, worked out that they were going to pay, $8,000 more on the loan and whatever. But it's better than increasing the payment, because the person could only afford that payment to begin with. Why increase it later on? So
yeah. And I think that this is going to be really interesting. The media is going to be really interesting in markets, because they've now got nothing to talk about. So it's media back to media normal, which is, let's blow every snowflake into a snowball. Let's put a snowball into an avalanche, and let's see if we can't level some cities while we're doing it.
Yeah.
And look, what that does, it provides opportunity in markets ultimately, because they can kind of convince you out of it. And it'll be really interesting to see whether that's actually a dynamic that happens, because we've sort of bounced reasonably well in Australia, and we're sort of hovering at okay levels. But if the media scare the shit out of people, then that's a different story.
Yeah.
But it also provides opportunity of that, be greedy when people are feared type of mentality. But we're starting to kind of look and go, Australia is actually a good place to be. Low rates as far as the rest of the world in regards to COVID-19. We've got the best balance sheet in the world, or one of the best balance sheets in the world, where it would be in the top 5 balance sheets in the world to continue to stimulate. Our politicians are back arguing, which is not going to increase anything in the country, but at least that shows some signs of normality, which will slow progress ultimately. So I think that it's proceed with caution, and but you got to be looking right about now. Like, if you've got appetite for growth, you've got to be looking in and around. And maybe the US, maybe that's sort of done its rush, but I reckon if it has done its rush, it'll correct, and then you'll get a second bite at the cherry. But the consumers, it looks like the market is starting to go from the growth stories and the growth stocks to starting to go, who are the people who are suppressed, who are now going to merge out of COVID in the next 2 to 3 years, and then potentially, like what we've been talking about, actually thrive as a result of the reduced competition or the increased output based on government incentives.
Yeah. Well, something similar in the world of real estate too. The media love to sort of beat up a storm, and we've been tracking good information lately, which has been brilliant. The media talking about property prices dropping and whatever. And hey, listen, people have got to flood the market and sell their properties for massive losses for any property prices to decrease. Like, that's what has to happen. And it's interesting. The stats that just came out like of late in the world of our space, where you have a look at. Let me have a quick look out here. I think we go Ecamm live. You can have a look at this. It's a little bit blurry, but
I can see it.
Yeah, no, the combined capitals of listing properties listed for sale, 26% down, right? And so, right now, what that shows me and shows the rest of the marketplace is there's not blood on the street. There's not your everyday mum and dad being forced to sell their houses. There's not, this deep discounting going on all over the place where, the world is going to end when it comes to property prices. So, that right now supports the position that we've had, for many, many months, even before COVID, that we've got a real stock shortage coming into our marketplace in prime marketplaces. Really interesting one, what you're like what you're saying. If you look at Perth there, Perth, really interesting. It has a 34% decrease in property listing in Perth. And now Perth, for the first time in 10 years, is now the number one median rental yield 5.6% in Perth, compared to the rest of the country, which is interesting, because when you have a look at it, yield often leads the growth story in real estate. Certainly in the cities. I've lost you, Andy. I don't know where you've gone, but you've got a heartbeat there, hopefully. But yield certainly leads a growth story often in the world of real estate. And, when the rental yields are very high, there's a disparity in the affordability in that piece of real estate, and people can afford to buy more real estate. So, for me, that's a really interesting bit of information. We're having a little look at Perth at positive, but certainly Brisbane, which is, the average yield in Brisbane, 5.4%, which is a great yield. And in the right markets in Melbourne, we're still getting, 5% yields in the right market in Melbourne, which is really interesting. But you have a look at it. I didn't, I show it again just quickly, but if you have a quick look, Canberra, listings down 29% as well. A 37% change since same time in last 12 months. So at the end of the day, what we're seeing is less properties being resold on the market and listed for sale. Now we might see a little bit of an increase in the next little while, but certainly in the middle of a pandemic and the world's ending and stuff like that, that didn't happen. People have got mortgage holidays, so the stress is off. And already, because we have property management businesses in both Melbourne and Brisbane, we've seen people out in droves over the weekends, the last 2 weekends, when people are allowed back in open homes, renting properties. And in Brisbane, the rents have gone up. Like the properties that have been rented in our rent roll in Brisbane, the rents are going up. So Melbourne's been flat, or maybe a $10 reduction, which is to be expected in certain places with a little bit of extra stock around. Melbourne is not as tight as other cities, but still, at the end of the day, there's no blood on the streets from mum and dads selling their houses and losing their shirts. That's absolute friggin' rubbish the media is perpetuating, and dipshit dent. I think that stuff, personally, it gets my goat, Andy. Like, you work in the world of, financial planning. If you even look sideways in the wrong way, the ASIC's up your bloody behind, and an idiot like Dent can come and roll around and make all these claims under the sun and not be held accountable to fucking anything. It's fucking ludicrous.
I'm not going to call Mr. Dent an idiot because we might meet again.
Well, I will in the real estate game anyway. The guy doesn't know his ass from his ear when it comes to real estate. But, I'm not, I have no idea about the equities world, but the guy doesn't even own real estate. He's a knobhead, and he's never even bought in Australia. He doesn't know what he's talking about. So I'll go on public challenge. Let's go toe to toe in real estate in Australia, mate. Put your money where your mouth is.
Well, you do know. I mean, if in my world, we chat with economists all of the time, and believe it or not, there was a point in time where I almost decided to become an economist. I'm serious. Almost decided to become an economist. I finished my master's, and I thought, what do I do? Do I keep going? Because I always had a bit of an inferiority complex because I just felt like I didn't know stuff. And that comes from being dyslexic and not being able to spell at school. It created an impact. So I thought, if I'm a doctor, Dr. Fenton A has a good ring about it. But economists have this ability and this license to interpret data and be wrong constantly and be appreciated for how they have told you the reasons why they're wrong using the new data that proved them wrong. Like, so that's that is the life of an economist. And unfortunately, it's true. You sit there and you go, oh, okay, so where do you reckon it's going? Oh, it could go anywhere. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, they can't predict though, just on that and without, well, no. So Harry's obviously dead to you, but you can't predict how an Australian government is going to respond to this.
No.
And so here's the thing is that you get commentators who come out and commentate and go, well, based on what happened previously, this is going to happen. Well, you would have to go back a long way to kind of make that assumption. What happened recently, the government are doing exactly what, geez, I wish I had my old presentation here, exactly what we expected them to do. And in the financial press, they've been ridiculed for treating a pandemic like a debt crisis. And I kind of thought, even in the financial terms, it's kind of funny because they treated a debt crisis by printing more money and creating more debt. And then they treat a pandemic by printing more money and creating more debt. So it's so peculiar, but they're using the same tools to try and stimulate the economy. So I think you could almost see through it, but the level of protection that the government, especially in Australia, has given has meant that we're definitely shielded for the now. And I think that there will be turbulence at a point in time in the future, the degree of which I think will be blown out of proportion by the media on multiple different levels because they just don't understand it. You know, they're looking at data and they're kind of comparing apples with plants like this, and so the comparisons aren't really, you know, in line or correct. I think all we can look forward to is yes, a changing of tides and a changing of the way that we do things. And within that, like in property, so in equities, I think in a different way, but I guess to relate it to property, it'd be, well, perhaps you don't get the growth, but you get the yield. Or perhaps you don't get the yield, perhaps you get the longer term prospects of subdivisions and things like this. It just changes the way in which you move forward a little bit. It doesn't necessarily change the game and doesn't write it off, because the reality is all of the same fundamentals are still going to be true tomorrow as they were today. And there is no more cash. Sorry, there is more cash floating around the world right now than what there has ever been before. And what you've got to look out for is you've got to look out for inflation and deflation. And they're very, very different things when it relates to then equities and property. But what the commentators like to do is they like to go, well, we don't understand what inflation is and we don't understand what deflation is. So we'll just hit the property market. And and the share market. And I tell you what, the share market has been like ridiculously resilient, especially in the US. It's like it's unfathomable. But you've got to understand that people are holding cash and they're going, we need to make that cash do something. So it needs to be somewhere. And if you think
never more than ever, I mean, never more than ever in my life anyway, you know, has cash been so worthless? You're like, you know.
What year were you born, Jace?
1973. But like, you know, from paying attention, you know.
Let me find out whether that statement's true. I'll do my little research.
Do your math. But, you know, at the end of the day, gee, like money is like cash is trash. You know, I was talking about this the other day. Like you got that in your bank account, you know, what's it getting you? Nothing. 0.5% if you're lucky. Inflation's 1.5. The value of your cash just went down 1%, you know, because it's in a bank account, you know, and you know that you know, I've never experienced that. You know, is it true for the whole? How old are you anyway, Andy? What's your age? Like, you know.
Well, no, I just wanted to let you know. So just here statistically, just to let you know. So this is when Jason was born.
Oh,
roughly.
It was the peak.
So interest rates have gone up. So Jason was wrong. So he's going to add the disclaimer here. He's definitely going to add the disclaimer here that yes. So this. Where is it? Is it there? It's there. It's there. It's there. It's there.
When I was paying attention.
That was when he was born. He did have a little bit of uplift, but when he was 7, so he's changing his script from when he was 7. He's never.
When I was 7, since I was 7, down.
And it's totally true, right? That is absolutely true. Since Jason was 7, it's been nothing but declining.
Yeah. The value of cash has been declining since I was 7. So that is 40 years. I'm 47. 47. There you go.
There you go.
40 years of decline of cash value.
which was 40 years of basically positive markets, because that was basically what the S&P did over that same period of time.
Yeah,
so
wow.
That was there. That was when you were 7. So
Look at
basically,
the greatest growth in history
was because of Jason's 7th birthday.
It's because I was born, I turned 7, and the world changed.
And we saw the greatest sense of the growth. I bet you when your parents said, you're going to do incredible things, Jason, you didn't realise that it was going to be this. All of a sudden, it's like, oh my God, Jason's 7th birthday actually put the world into boom.
Mate, my teachers said, Whitten, you'll amount to nothing. And I said, no, piss off. You watch.
And he did this to world markets.
Come on.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Mate, you know, like you said, there's a lot of money out there trying to find a home. And, you know, it's interesting. What I get excited about, you know, for the next little bit is for those who are a little bit entrepreneurial in our space, you know, in business or, you know, real estate or whatever, you know, money wants to find a home. Money wants to work. People who have money and cash, like they would prefer to get a nice, safe return out of it. 5, 6, 8% would be preferable, you know, better if they can. So, you know, on the flip side of this thing where, you know, cash is devalued in the bank, you know, I'm quite excited as an entrepreneur to see that cash out in the marketplace working and what could be done with it. You know, that gets me pumped, you know,
Totally.
know, because, you know, you can just say, listen, you know, where would you invest it? What could you do? And, you know, it's not a bad idea. You know what I was watching? I was watching this guy called Naz on Naz, like Naz Daily or something.
That sounds like a made-up name.
No, it's totally true.
What's your name? My name's Naz Daily.
No. It's actually a very cool. It's a very cool Facebook channel, and he was showing that there is this process in a country, and I'll track it down, but it's law in this country that you have to everybody above a certain salary, above a certain income. Everyone has to donate back into the system 2.5% in that country. It's law. And it's really interesting about that money going back into the system.
Is Naz Daily like the cover name for Putin?
No, I don't know. I'll get it for you. He does a cool Facebook thing. Anyway, like, it was really interesting to see all of this cash. It was like $1 trillion a year or something like this goes back into that economy to then fund either charitable projects or money to then fund new business concepts coming up and stuff like that. It was actually, look, it was a fabulous idea. Anyway, I like the idea of money needing to find a place to go to work, you know, and those who've got it need to put it to work somewhere, and those who've got good ideas and maybe a bit of grit and a bit of focus can really take advantage of this time in life. I don't think there's ever been a time in the last 20 years that I've been investing that it's been more attractive to propose something to someone with money and get a return for them. Like,
True.
Do you know what I mean? Like, because before it's like, well, mate, if you can't get me more than 10% I've got in my fucking bond treasury or something, like, why would I give you the money? You know? And now it's like, now it's like they're getting 1%. And they're like, if you can get me 3%, you're a genius, you know?
And it's going to change. I think last week we talked about risk lending and stuff like that. And, you know, I guess it's worth, because there could be people going, fuck it, no, just throw everything in. We'll throw everything in. We'll stop being safe. But there's the one thing that can happen that can mean everything that we've said is horseshit. It's happened in Brazil, South America, many countries in South America, happened in Thailand, it's happened in many countries around the world. There's not too many Western countries, but it's not off the cards, but it's a period of prolonged deflation. Now,
is that
deflation,
when a dictator comes in or something like that, or?
Well, and that's the interesting thing, right? Is because deflation is what you would call an open market event. So where you've got, I love actually, Paul Ray just put a comment in here a little while ago. He's gone, what was it? If you don't like what an economist has to say, ask another one. But an open market condition is one of those things where if the government and the Treasury and the IMF, if they don't intervene, if they don't actually intervene, then, and that's what happened, because South America and these different countries, they didn't have the kind of capacity to intervene, and these places didn't want to intervene. Like the IMF were not in the game of intervening at all for them. It's pretty racist, but anyway, oh God, my brain.
Prejudice.
I tell you what, what's going on up here is not allowed to come out up here. But it's hard to see that the government and the some of the tools that are running the world at the moment, allowing the world to go into a deflationary spiral too much. And yes, I get that printing money actually deflates prices, but not with the velocity, devalues currency, but the velocity of money that's going around the system at the moment. And this was when I was thinking about becoming an economist, of which Paul would probably just ask somebody else's opinion, was what my thesis was going to be about, which was the velocity of money around the system. Because does that enable greater amounts of leverage because of how quickly it goes around? And I've built it out a long way, but effectively debt first started back in the spice trade days, or it actually started before then, but this is a good example. You would build a boat, and Jason would build the boat because Jason was the king who had the money, and he had a whole lot of other kings who decided to come on and build a boat with them. Then Jason would kill the rest of the kings, and anyway, so he would send that boat over, and he paid a lot of money for that boat and stocked it up with spices and things. And then a year later, maybe 2 years later, that boat would come back and have a whole lot of spices. So that was when Jason got his return on the loan that he had left out. And all that's happened is that over time, that boat's journey has become shorter and shorter and shorter until now it actually vibrates. It doesn't, the boat never goes out. It just like shuffles in spot, right? And that every little vibration of that boat is in theory, it going across the world and picking up more spices and bringing it back. So if Jason knew that his boat was just shuffling on the spot and actually just getting goods like in a quarter of a second, would you not then leverage the living shit out of that, being the king that you used to be back in those days? You probably would, because you could, because the velocity of money, which means that, and so anybody who's watching this isn't a drunk conversation, this is actually a thesis, but I believe, and what my thesis believed, or it never was done, but what the null hypothesis that we're looking at, so what our belief was behind it was that because you've got so much velocity of money, or because you've got the velocity of money being able to interact so quickly with each other, it gives you the ability to have far greater levels of leverage. And potentially, even at a government level, that's what we're actually facing. Is that?
Well, I mean, Alan Bond believed in your theory, mate. He must have been studying your thesis. You know, mate, right?
Fucking it, I'm glad I didn't do it. Imagine that, getting to the end of it. So proud. It's like this, and you go, here it is, my life's work.
Well, I mean, you know, I mean, I don't know if you know the Alan Bond story, but it's, you know, like
clearly not.
But I suggest he's quite a famous Western Australian magnate, and
I know Bondy.
Yeah, Bondy. So, mate, you know, he leveraged it. Like he famous quote, and he probably didn't say it. He goes like, you know, if you owe the bank $10,000 and you can't pay it, you're in trouble. But if you owe the bank, you know, $100 million and you can't pay it, they're in trouble, right? So he had that world of like, you know, he leveraged with the bank over $100 million, couldn't pay it, called a creditors meeting and said, righto, fellas, this other bank's lending me 10 million. Take the 10 million or see you later. I'm out of here. You know, that Bondy's one of those kings, mate. He's like, yeah, I get it.
No, mate, he was your next door neighbor king, but he didn't come up with the velocity of money concept. So my intellectual property is still sound.
Mate, I think he might have been channeling you, but you know, it's the idea, isn't it? Like, so, you know, at the end of the day, it's always an interesting one. You know, what does debt mean? You know, where does the where does the hot potato end up landing, when it comes to debt?
And I think that's it, mate. I think that where people need to really be starting is, we've been talking about it for a long time, but this is really it. It is the new normal, right? And that is far more than what most people actually understand. Like, the new normal isn't just social distancing. The new normal may well be larger amounts of leverage on government's balance sheets, larger amount of tensions through government trade. We've gone through a period of time of globalization. It might be a period of time where some of that globalization is actually pulled back a little bit in order to be able to harness equal trade, or the ability of a nation to be able to actually exist. There's so many different factors that are coming into this, but the beauty is that when you've kicked on through multiple years worth of prosperity, so you've got that downward trend of interest rates, that's been a 40-year band-aid.
Yeah.
And
so
now
where to from here, right? So it can't go any lower, or can it? Maybe it can go to zero. So then I was saying this about real estate. It's like every piece of real estate now must stand on its own 2 feet in its own merits. It can't go up in value because interest rates go down.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So it's
even pricing.
Even pricing. You have to have quality stuff, and the rubbish stuff shows up when in these times where it's like, well, yeah.
A classic example, like an index, right? So the ASX 200, or the All Ords, for anybody who doesn't know, is so the ASX 200 is literally the top 200 companies in Australia by the size of the operations. It's called market capitalization, but effectively it's how big the company is on their financial data, right? So the top 200 companies. Now, when people nowadays in black box buying, they buy because they think, oh yeah, the world's going great, and boom, the whole index. They buy the whole index, right? But you're buying the shit, the shovel, the gold. You're buying everything in that index. You're buying companies that are going like that because they're like, oh my God, what business were you in? Well, I was in the business of I can't think of one.
Video rental.
I'm Blockbuster.
Yeah, I'm Blockbuster.
Right? So you're buying Blockbuster as well, but the index will climb based on that herd mentality and that herd buying like this. And I've forgotten the point. So the leveler. Yeah. So markets now, I reckon you will see in investing as well. And this is a big call because this goes against everything that so much of my economists friends and your friend Harry Dent has had to say so many years, is that now I think people go away from potentially index buying because they'll go, well, no, we don't want everything. We don't want all properties. We want these properties.
Yeah.
Why do you want them? Because these are getting great income. Why do you want these? Because they're great potential growth. And all of a sudden assets are individualized, and asset classes and industries are then sub-classified based on what value and what expected value they're going to bring in the future. And I think that is and then risk pricing and risk engagement, which I freaking love because we just know it backwards. Risk pricing and risk engagement and asset selection are going to be crucial. Right? Because it's like, okay, because Jason, you could own the best potential asset, but I'm going to look at you and I'm going to judge the asset based on its risk profile, and then I'm going to judge you based on your risk profile. And if you're fodder, right, and the asset is gold, I'm going to price you between fodder and gold. And I'm not saying you're fodder, mate, but you get my point. Like if you're not worth taking a bet on, but the land is, I'm going to price that somewhere in between that. And my rationale is going to be, when you're out of the game, what's my recovery value? And it's not going to be based on interest rates.
Mate,
it's not going to be.
And I think, and you mentioned this last time we chatted as well, mate, technology is going to enable this in the future, blockchain and so on. So, mate, I've just had a bit of a thought and idea. I've got a really interesting guest I reckon we could bring on next week. He's been doing blockchain projects for about 10 years. Be interesting to sort of talk to him. There's a few people that I know. So, they're trippy people. They're trippy ladies and gentlemen, like they live in the Matrix, and but be interesting to see, the projects that they work on and the things that they, way out there into the future that they think about, in that sort of space. So that might be a good way to sort of wind up the.
Well, let's go to.
Yeah, got
let's just go to the questions and see if anything's there.
Yeah.
Good thing is Margot hasn't given us an angry face tonight.
Well, I was making sure I wasn't swearing tonight, Mrs. Fenton. So hopefully.
So I probably took over the bone on that one. So Dave said, did I hear correct? If we buy industrial grinders and vacs, we could get low cover and get back on tax rebate and look at a grant.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. So depending, Dave, on your sequence of events, if it's a new business or a recovering business, you could apply for the grant because you're going to do grinding in a new way or whatever it is, or you're looking to employ 5 people. If you got the grant, then you purchased the equipment, then you wrote them off, like you got the tax deduction. If you sequence that out, as an accountant or got your accountant on that, it'll be a pretty interesting game plan. The grant, $10,000 is tax free. You don't have to declare it. You go buy some equipment and then you get the tax deductions on that equipment. It's pretty cool. So, yeah, the answer is yes.
But you've got to qualify for JobKeeper, or you've got to be one of the industries that have been hit by it, and you've got to be in Victoria for that one. If you're outside of Victoria,
Queensland's got a $10,000 grant as well. Yeah.
Don't listen to us. Go and find the information for the site, or post it in here, and we'll find it and we'll drop it in.
You can search it, gang. You can search it. It's there. Yeah, for sure.
Actually, yeah, that's easier. It's a great way of automating it. Find it and post it in here. So Shay's always awesome. Do you think people actually know how to submit JobKeeper and qualify it? No.
Oh, it's not. No, I don't think so. It's actually quite difficult to really get to handle it, and you just got to have the right accountant and the right support, and a really good bookkeeper, I suppose. So I think that's hard for plenty of people.
Look, I reckon first part, reach out to your accountant and get the assistance with it, like yesterday. Do it now, 6 o'clock at night, call them. And if not, then reach out to us. We've got plenty of people like Paul and Mr. Ray, all these guys. We can put you in the hands of great people who will take care of you. Harry's on there as well. Harry's of the world. We've got plenty of people who can introduce you.
Good fellas.
Would now be a good time to put my house on the market in Kalgoorlie?
In Kalgoorlie?
I have no idea.
Yeah, listen, I'd wait a smidgen. Kalgoorlie's waking up, whoever's listening in, and I wouldn't right now, but if 6 months time, like this is the interesting thing. Perth is such a strange place. It's buzzing right now. I know I've got a client up.
That was actually for Jason Bourne's either mother or partner. Diana Bourne.
Cool. Well, Diana, I would wait maybe 4 to 6 months because Perth is waking up. When Perth wakes up, the Kalgoorlies and the Port Hedlands and the external feeders wake up too. So I'd wait and listen, Jade, I can't remember her last name now, Jade from Kalgoorlie. I've done a lot of business with Jade out in Kalgoorlie. She's amazing. So if you ever want to sell out there, let me know. I can connect you with the right person.
Now, let me just jump into a couple of others, Jace, because I've got a couple of ones that were done before the call, which we probably should have done at the beginning.
Yeah, you should have kicked it off with that, Andy. Anyway.
Yep. We'll make the relative apologies. That's from Diana as well. What is the best way to allocate business tax obligations within a budget and to make sure the funds are there every quarter?
Andy, you want to answer that one? Like, I know what I do.
Look, this year's a little bit different, but better to have too much than too little. So step one, you got to have a budget. And what we do is we grab profit and loss, and then we add back what we call the non-profit and loss expenses, which is company tax. Well, you're over there. Company tax, PAYG tax, GST, and all other non-balance sheet expenses like capital payments on loans. And we get the accountant, we say, Mr. and Mrs. Accountant, can you please put these at the bottom of every quarter? And then what I do is I actually pull them into monthly blocks. So let's just say you've got from January to March, you've got $3,000 worth of BAS that you pay on average every quarter. Then we go $1,000 a month and we redirect that into a bank account that is isolated for tax. And we do the same thing. What's our average PAYG tax installment? Bang, we put that in. And then, so that's stage one. And we do that with all of those non-balance sheet, non-profit and loss expenses. Stage two is then so once you master that, and we have different bank accounts for it, we have a tax account, we have a trading account, and we have a cost of goods sold account. So I have 3 different bank accounts. Oh, well, actually we have a war chest as well. And there's some funky ways that we can use that stuff. And if you listen to us, you'll learn how to do some really cool stuff with that. But those 4 bank accounts are, in my view, essential because it itemizes it and it pre-allocates it so that in your trading account, you always know exactly how much you've got to spend on future projects, right? Now, 2.0 version of that or 3.0 version of that is then when you forecast out. And depending on how well you forecast your pipeline, and pipeline means new business coming in, is that you can start to add the new business coming in and you can add the percentages of, well, on average, how much does each new bit of business that comes into the business take of fixed costs, costs of goods sold, and how much GST is that going to put in? How your PAYG is not going to increase unless you employ more people, right? Your company tax will potentially, so that will go up. Your GST will potentially, and so you can create some really basic, simple, not complicated, but really, really basic calculations in the 2.0 version. But what I do in standard terms right now is I'd say, what did we pay last year? And just pre-plan that. And if you have doubled in the last year, we'll just double it. And if you got too much in there, fine. Just make sure that you pay all the bills that are going out. But that's how I'd tackle that.
Mate, I'd sort of say to a few people, that sometimes where that money sits might be in your offset account and your home loan, and so you're getting a bit of a benefit from it. But depending on your accountant and how you run that, will depend on what you do. So, but certainly.
Oh my God, a diamond!
All good. So, mate, we might give it a call it a night, mate. Great to chat with you, brother, on a Friday night. Hopefully that was valuable for everyone dialing in. A few questions. Maybe next time we'll sort of get to them early rather than at the end. But you and I are trying to work out our mojo here.
That was just me being a genius.
I'm trying to find where they are because we're broadcasting on 3 different. We're broadcasting in 3 different places. So,
mate, when it comes to you, mate, I'm just this. Still a lot of noise for one man.
All good. All right, mate. Well, listen, awesome as always to chat with you, brother. And hopefully people found that valuable. And as always, let us know if there's any questions, improvements, feedback.
Totally, please.
But yeah, we're having some fun. Hopefully we're able to add some value to people listening in, and let us know what we can help you with in business and in property. But that's it. I think we'll sign off, Andy. Have a good time.
Everything you've heard in this video may or may not be correct, judging on the ears that you heard it through.
All right.
Happy Friday.
Everyone. Have a good weekend. Bye.